Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Deku had a Shadow Teleportation Quirk Part 8. Last time on the What If, Class 1A just completed the provisional license exams, but they still haven't got the results, so let's jump back into the What If. So it's right after the second phase of the exams, and the remaining students were told to go to the center of the arena, where a board is now standing, and then revealed whether or not you passed the exams. And everyone passed the exams except for Bakugo and Todoroki, because Todoroki fought with Inasa during the exams, and that docked him some points. And the same things happened with Bakugo, where he wasn't exactly the politest person. And after the results, they are told that whoever didn't pass the exams will have to take classes in order to try again. And after that, the people who pass go get their pictures taken. And Izuku and Bakugo do not have the fight, since Izuku doesn't have one for all. And since they didn't fight, they don't get suspended, so everyone goes to the ceremony, and they all learn about the hero work studies. And 3 days later, during class, 3 people walk in, who Aizawa says are the big 3. And after them trying to explain what the work study is, and them not doing so good, the yellow-haired guy named Mirio says that in order for them to truly learn what the work study is, they have to fight him. So they all go to Gym Gamma. When the fight began, the melee fighters tried to surround Mirio, but they were shocked when his clothes seemed to fall through him, and he sunk into the ground, and he was able to swiftly punch most of the long-range fighters. Before the melee fighters were able to get there, Izuku and Bakugo then launched themselves at Mirio, but both of their attacks went straight through, and for a counterattack, Mirio sunk into the ground, and he prepared to hit both of them, but before the hits landed, Izuku created 2 portals in front of Mirio's fist, and one in front of his gut, and both of his hands went through, but he was quick enough to stop his fist from hitting himself, and seeing it as his best option, he goes for everyone else. And even though Izuku tried to protect them with his portals, Mirio was able to warp and move around them just in time. So now it's only Izuku and Bakugo versus Mirio. And the first person he goes for is Izuku, since in this fight he is more of a support. So after some dodging around, Izuku eventually gets hit and is knocked down, and Bakugo fell shortly afterwards, since he didn't have the protection of Izuku's portals. After everyone got back up, Mirio put on some clothes, and he asked what everyone learned. When he hears the class say they didn't learn anything, he has a speech and he says that you should turn your experiences into power, and that even if you have a hard or weak quirk, it can be good as long as you practice. And after the session, Nejire asked Mirio if anyone caught his eye. And in response, Mirio says that Izuku and possibly Bakugo could be great for Sir. And a couple of days later, Izuku got called to the teacher's break room, and when he got there, Mirio and All Might were in the room, and Mirio tells him that Sir Night gave him an offer, since he heard about Izuku from Mirio, and now he doesn't have a bias since he doesn't have one for all. And he liked Izuku's quirk, and he believes that his quirk could be useful for the investigation that's going on. In which Izuku agrees to, since after he learned about the work studies, he wanted to work with Edgeshot, but he was currently busy. He could learn more about Mirio and how to move like him. And the next 3 days Class 1A had, Izuku went to Sir Night's agency, and since he was given the offer, he didn't have to do the test. So when he got there, they got right into the investigation, and they tell him about the Shiahai Saikai. And after the discussion, Night sent Mirio and Izuku to go on patrol. And while they were doing the patrol, they learned about each other's hero names, and Izuku finds out that Mirio was actually holding back on them during the fight against them. He actually has 2 quirks. One was his permeation, but he also has a super strength quirk like All Might. So I gave Mirio one for all. So after a bit of patrolling, they get to an alleyway, but before they can walk past, a little girl runs out of it. And when Izuku looks up, after getting run into by Eri, he sees the head of the group, Overhaul, who asks Eri to come back. But what made Izuku mad was the fact that the little girl was visibly shaking and crying. But not only that, she had bandages covering her arms. Mirio, trying to do the right thing, tells Overhaul they are just students, doing some patrols, and he tries to get Izuku back up, and while doing this, he puts Izuku's mask on. But when the little girl tightens her grip, Izuku refuses to just leave her. Then he starts to question the man, who says he'll explain if they just follow him down the alley. And as he walks into the alley, he starts to move his glove with his other hand, which made the little girl run back to him. And before Izuku can start to run after her, Mirio puts a hand on Izuku's shoulder and just shakes his head. And when the two get back to the agency, Izuku gets lectured by Sir Night about how he can't save everyone and how he needs patience. Days later, and for some reason, Izuku, Kirishima, Sue, and Ochako had to go the same way for the whole trip to their work studies, and eventually they get to Sir Night agency. And when they enter the main room, it is full of pro heroes, including Factum's agency, Ryuku's agency, and other pro heroes. And after a bit of looking, Izuku saw the old man that was at the League of Villains raid, and who he got the inspiration for his special move. and their teacher, Mr. Aizawa. And when Sir Night-Eye believes that everyone is there, he starts the meeting. During the meeting, they discuss the bullets that seem to damage the quirk cells, and how the Shia Hasaikai seem to be using the blood of that little girl to make the bullets. And after the meeting, Aizawa was planning on forbidding the students from continuing, but after some thought, he decides not to, since he knows that Izuku will still go. So we skip a couple of days. After some investigation, Sir Night-Eye was finally able to discover where Eri was being held. And the next morning, at around 8 a.m., the rescue mission begins with one policeman pressing the intercom and reading out a warrant, but a villain bursts through the wall and he launches some of the police away. But before they got too far, Izuku is able to save the policemen, so they are hurt, but they aren't as injured as they could have been. And Izuku and a group of heroes and some police officers run into the building, while the other half of them stay outside and they fight anyone near them. And while the group was running in the building, some underlings tried to get in their way, but they were easily subdued by Santa Peter and Bubble Girl, allowing the rest of them to continue on. After running for a bit of time in the basement, the group runs into a wall, so Mirio decides to continue on his own, and he uses his permeation quirk, and he runs with his own form of full cowling at 10%, allowing him to run faster. But before the others can follow after Mirio, a hole appears under them, and before Izuku can react, they are already too far down to teleport back up, and they fall into a room with 3 villain henchmen in it. And Sun Eater stands up and says that he can deal with them on his own, which Fatgum tells them to continue on, which they do after some persuasion. A couple of minutes of running later, and Mimic tries to target Eraserhead with a piece of the wall that would have crushed him, but Fatgum and Kirishima get in the way of the attack, making it so both of them are separated from the group. And after some fighting, the outcome of the fight will be the same, with Kirishima ending the fight injured. So we jump back to the main group, and they are running through a hallway, and the walls start to twist and contort with the power of Mimic quirk. So to stop this, Rocklock uses his quirk and he locks the walls in place. And after a minute of them able to catch their breath, new walls start to appear, and they separate the heroes, with Sir Night-Eye with the police, Izuku with the Eraserhead, and Rocklock by himself. And while he was distracted, Toga ambushes Rocklock. And the way Izuku and Aizawa got through the wall was by Izuku flinging himself around until he was fast enough, and he launched himself out the wall, kicking it with his iron soles, and it created a hole which allowed Izuku and Eraserhead to teleport to the next room. And when they get there, they see 2 rock locks, with one of them seeming to be unharmed, and the other one was a stab wound, which Eraser was able to see through, and was able to tell which one was the real one. And they started to fight Toga once she revealed herself, but she was able to get away barely, and before she left, she was able to stab Aizawa in the back. But the wound wasn't as bad as it looked, so that after a bit of time, they continued on. And after the encounter, for some reason, Toga was purposely trying to rile up Mimic, to the point where he started to yell, and he gave away his location. And after a couple of his yells, Izuku was finally able to pinpoint where Mimic was, and he used his portals to make him fall, and when he was fast enough, he launched himself at the roof, and when he kicked the roof, it showed where Mimic was. And Eraser, when he looked at a little piece of him, he deactivated his quirk, making him fall to the ground. But before he hit the ground, Night-Eye knocked him out with his high-density seals, and Izuku created portals to cushion the fall. And they find out after some investigating that for some reason the League of Villains betrayed Mimic. And after a bit of a conversation, the 3 that continued on were Sir Night-Eye, Eraserhead, and Izuku. And they ran until they were face to face with a wall, and Izuku does the same thing they did. And when the 3 get to the other side, by portal, they see they are in a giant room full of spikes. And Mario is fighting the villain Overhaul. And since now he has one for all, he didn't lose his quirk, since now he is fast enough to make it to Eri, without either of them being shot. And Eraser used his quirk on Overhaul, and they were just about to win, but Chrono woke up, and he used his quirk on Mario, slowing him down a significant amount. And that was the moment Eraser had to blink. Though it's the second Overhaul had, he created a wall, blocking Eraser's line of sight. And during the confusion, one of the henchmen had a gun with an anti-quirk bullet loaded, and they went to shoot Mario, but Izuku was able to block the bullet, and he launched it into the ground, and he gave it to Sir Night-Eye so they have more of a sample for testing. And Chrono was able to grab Eraser and bring him down to a secret room without anyone noticing. And Izuku comes up with a plan and tells Mario, which he agrees to. And the plan was Mario would use One for All to break a hole through the ceiling, and Izuku would grab Eri and teleport away. And when Izuku grabbed Eri and they started to fall, Overhaul tried to spear them, but Izuku was able to dodge all the attacks. And as a last resort, he fused himself with Shin, and they turned into one. And he used the quirk confession, and he asked if Eri wants more people to die because of her. And she, when she hears this, starts to try to go back, but Izuku holds onto her tighter and smiles and says that everything will be okay, and they fling themselves into the hole. And when they got out, the people right next to them were Ryuku's team and some police officers. So Izuku brought Eri to the police, and they tried to comfort her. And when he was sure she was safe, Izuku jumped back into the hole, and when he entered, Overhaul was hiding behind a wall. And whenever Mary tried to break them or phase through, through, he would create another one and move around them so Mirio couldn't get a good hit on him. So Izuku landed on one of the walls, and he used his portal to hit Overhaul on both sides with his electric batons. And that distraction gave Mirio enough time to phase through and punch Overhaul as hard as he could, knocking him out. And because of Mirio being stronger and Izuku able to get Eri out of safety, there were no casualties, but there were just injuries. And a week later, everyone was healed to the point where they could go back to their normal lives. And since Eri in her mind was saved by them, she's still open to the two of them, but she still doesn't smile. On the first day back after the incident, Aizawa tells the class about the UA school festival, and the class eventually come up with the same idea, as they do in the canon. And a couple of days before the festival, Izuku was told by Mina that he will be doing some of the special effects, which was during the second half of the dance, he would leave and go to the rafters, and he would use his portal to fling Ayama around on a rope and make his lasers look cooler. But the day before the actual festival, Izuku noticed the rope was a bit ruined, so he planned to run to the store before the dance. So the next morning, he was leaving the store, and when he turned to go back to UA, he ran into a man in a big coat and a little girl with red hair. But Izuku noticed the man's hair and face in general, also the disguise he put on, and he was able to tell that he was up to no good. And after putting some of the puzzle pieces together, he recognized him as the Gentle criminal. Izuku then puts down his bag, and he launches himself at Gentle, since he knows that he's going to try and ruin the festival. And with Yue on thin ice from all that's happened, he will not allow it to happen. And the two fight, with Gentle using Rebound to bounce Izuku and himself around. And Izuku uses his portals to make it so both of them stay close to each other. And eventually, they somehow make it to woods right outside the UA borders. And Gentle didn't bring Brava since he was in the fight the whole time, and he didn't want her to get hurt. So she's currently at the place where the fight started, and she was trying to chase after them, but she was a couple of miles away. And Izuku won the fight since Gentle wasn't able to get the power up from Brava, and Izuku is just a superior fighter in general, and her quirks make it an equal playing field. And when Izuku is sure he is down, he creates portals until he gets to the hero, Hound Dog, and Ectoplasm, and he turns Gentle in. And Izuku tells them that Gentle's sidekick Brava will try to be here shortly, so Ectoplasm makes clones and surround the school. So Brava gets caught shortly after, and no one else messes with the festival. And with around 10 minutes left, Izuku goes as quickly as possible back to the store to get his things, and he was able to make it to the dance on time. And the dance went off without any problems, and before it ended, Yuri smiled. And the same things will happen from here on out for the rest of the anime, with Endeavor using his ultimate move to beat a Nomu, and he starts to become a new symbol. And I guess this is where I'm going to leave the What If. I hope you enjoyed this whole series, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.